I still remember the sharp sting on my cheek, the sound echoing louder in my head than in the air around us. My daughter-in-law stood there, her lips curling into a triumphant smirk, her eyes full of venom and pride. People nearby gasped, some froze, others whispered, and me, I stood silently staring at her, not because of the pain of the slap, but because I knew something she didn't. That within the next 10 minutes, I'd walk into that same courthouse and take my seat on the judge's bench. Tell me honestly, what would you have done if someone you treated like your own child humiliated you in public, only to discover that their fate was in your hands moments later? Was I wrong for how I handled what came next? To understand how things got this bad, you need to know how it all began. My name is Helen, I'm 58 years old, and I've been a judge for nearly 25 years. I built my career from the ground up, balancing motherhood and a demanding job. My husband passed away 12 years ago, leaving me to raise our son, Daniel, alone. Daniel was my world. He was intelligent, soft-spoken, and had a gentle soul. I made sure he never felt the absence of a father. He became a lawyer himself, ironic, isn't it? And I couldn't have been prouder when he told me he'd met someone. Her name was Alicia. Alicia was beautiful, confident, and very charming, at least in the beginning. When Daniel first introduced her to me, she wore this warm smile and spoke so politely that I thought, my son really found someone special. She'd call me Mom and bring me flowers every time she visited. I saw her as the daughter I never had, but over time, small cracks started to appear. She'd make sly remarks about my old-fashioned ways, or joke that Daniel needed to grow up and stop being such a mama's boy. I brushed it off at first. Newlyweds have to find their own rhythm, I told myself, but soon those remarks turned into clear hostility. After they got married, they moved into a house not too far from mine. I'd visit occasionally, and every time I did, I could feel the tension in the air. Alicia would barely look at me. Once, I tried helping with the dishes, and she snapped, "We don't need you hovering around, Helen. We're adults." I was stunned. Daniel apologized later, but I could tell he was caught between us. I decided to give them space. After all, sometimes distance brings peace. But it didn't. Months later, Daniel began visiting me more often alone. He'd sit on the porch, sipping tea quietly. One night, he finally confessed, "Mom, Alicia's been different, controlling. She doesn't like me seeing you. She even checks my phone sometimes." My heart broke hearing that. I told him marriage needed communication, patience, understanding. But when I saw the faint bruise on his arm, I realized this wasn't just a marriage problem. It was emotional and maybe even physical abuse. When I confronted Alicia about it, she laughed in my face. "Oh, so now you're trying to turn him against me?" she sneered. "Maybe you should worry less about my marriage and more about your own loneliness." That was the first time I saw her true face. A woman who craved control, who fed off manipulation. I told Daniel to stay strong and not to let her isolate him. But what I didn't expect was how far Alicia would go. One morning, I woke up to a knock on my door. It was the police. They handed me a restraining order against me. According to Alicia's claim, I had threatened her safety and interfered in their marriage. My heart sank. I couldn't believe it. She accused me of trying to break them apart and even claimed I had shown up uninvited multiple times to harass her. I had never been so humiliated in my life. Daniel was devastated, but legally, his hands were tied. The case had to be investigated. As the weeks passed, I stayed quiet, respecting the process. I didn't call, didn't visit, didn't retaliate. My colleagues told me to keep my distance to protect my professional reputation, but deep down, it tore me apart. I had spent my life upholding justice and truth, and now my own family was being torn apart by lies. The case eventually reached the courts. Normally, I wouldn't be anywhere near it, but as fate would have it, the case's final appeal landed on my docket after a reassignment shuffle. When I saw the file and the names on it, I froze. Daniel and Alicia Thompson, my own family, I immediately informed the court administration and recused myself from handling it directly. But due to an unexpected conflict with another judge, the final review had to be overseen by a senior judge, me. Ethically, it was permitted since it was a procedural review, not a direct ruling. I had to remain objective, no matter the personal connection. The irony of it all was almost too much to bear. The day of the hearing arrived. I arrived early as I always did, dressed in my black robe, my face composed. But before court began, I decided to step outside briefly for some air. That's when it happened. Alicia spotted me walking down the courthouse steps. She walked straight up to me, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement, her eyes cold. "I hope you're ready to lose everything today," she hissed. "You and your pathetic son." I didn't respond. I simply looked at her, tired, disappointed. She didn't like that. In one swift motion, she raised her hand and slapped me hard. The sound echoed through the courtyard. Gasps erupted around us. She leaned in close and whispered, "Now you know who has the power." Then she turned and strutted away, her smirk wide and confident. I stood there, my cheek burning, my heart pounding not from anger, but disbelief. After everything I had done for her, this was what she became. But she had no idea what was waiting for her inside that building. So that's the situation I was in, standing outside the courtroom, humiliated and heartbroken, moments before taking my seat as the presiding judge. Tell me, what would you have done in my place? Would you have lashed out? Would you have let her walk away unpunished? Or would you have done what I did, let justice speak for itself? Before I tell you what happened next, pause for a second and comment below. What would you have done if your own daughter-in-law slapped you and lied to destroy your family? When I finally entered the courtroom, I kept my expression neutral. Everyone stood as I walked in and took my seat. The air grew tense when Alicia saw me behind the bench. The color drained from her face. She clearly hadn't known I'd be presiding that day. Her confident posture collapsed in an instant. She looked at Daniel, then at me, panicking. I could feel every eye in the room flicking between us, sensing the tension. I took a deep breath and began the proceedings. It wasn't my job to personally decide her guilt or innocence that day. My role was to review the evidence and ensure the trial had been conducted fairly. I listened as Alicia's lawyer stammered through their arguments. The evidence she had fabricated was weak screenshots with altered timestamps, text messages clearly edited, and a witness statement that contradicted itself. Her lies began unraveling right before her eyes. Daniel's lawyer calmly presented the facts, including security footage from their home that disproved her claims of harassment. Piece by piece, the truth emerged. I remained calm, professional, detached, but inside, I could feel justice breathing down her neck. Alicia avoided my gaze the entire time, fidgeting, trembling. When the review concluded, I rendered my decision formally. The appeal is dismissed. The evidence provided lacks credibility, and the initial ruling of false accusation stands. My gavel came down with a single, decisive thud. Alicia gasped softly, her body slumping as the reality hit her. Her restraining order was voided, and she now faced perjury charges for submitting falsified evidence. After court adjourned, I stepped out quietly. Daniel followed me into the hall. His eyes were glassy, full of relief and heartbreak. "Mom," he whispered, "thank you." I smiled sadly. "Don't thank me, son. Thank justice." We stood there for a moment, finally breathing freely after months of suffocation. Then Alicia emerged, escorted by her lawyer. She couldn't look at me. Her arrogance was gone. That same woman who had slapped me hours earlier now walked past, trembling. For a brief moment, she stopped, turned toward me, and opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came. She turned away and walked out of my life forever. Daniel eventually filed for divorce, and Alicia's perjury case went forward. She ended up with probation and mandatory counseling, which I think was fair. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. What she did wasn't just an insult, it was an attack on truth, on integrity, on the bond between a mother and son. Months later, Daniel began rebuilding his life. He moved to another city, started working at a new law firm, and slowly found happiness again. I still remember the day he called me, his voice lighter than it had been in years. "Mom," he said, "I met someone, and she's kind." That word kind was enough to bring tears to my eyes. I realized then that we had both survived something painful, but we hadn't let it change who we were. Sometimes I still think back to that day outside the court, the slap, the humiliation, the crowd, and I smile, not out of bitterness, but out of strength. Life has a way of bringing truth to light, no matter how dark things seem. Alicia's slap didn't break me. It reminded me that no one, no matter how deceitful, can escape justice forever. So tell me now, do you think I did the right thing? Would you have handled it differently if you were in my position? Like this video if you think I kept my dignity the right way, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. And please share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Until next time, this is Helen signing off. I'll see you all in the next story.